Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Creepy True Stories from Japan. Some kind of bacterial infection had me bedridden for the last week, but I'm finally starting to feel better. Thank you for being so patient with me. I also wanted to give a special thanks to Konstantinos from Greece, who has supported me through Ko-fi.com. The link to buy me a coffee is in the description box below. Subscribing, giving a thumbs up, commenting and sharing with your friends helps my channel to get recognized. So if you haven't yet, please take a quick second to do so. I really appreciate you all. Alright, let's get started. And trust me, you're gonna love this very first story. This is a story from when I was in 4th grade. I'm sure everyone has experienced this, but when I was a kid, I couldn't help but feel a sense of adventure just hearing about abandoned houses. I clearly remember being ridiculously excited that day when I heard that there was an abandoned house not far from where I lived. The day I heard about it was the day before summer vacation, so you can imagine my delight when it reached my ears. I even called some of my friends that I wasn't even that close to, and we decided to visit it that same day. I would have never fathomed that that day would trigger an abandoned house phobia, if such a thing exists. I'm 27 now, and I still can't get close to any abandoned places. Back to the story. On that day, my friends gathered later than I expected. There were 8 of us in total, and by the time the last one came along, the sky was beginning to turn a dark shade of orange. The friend who knew where it was led the way, and the rest of us followed him like soldiers. We were all excited, and we were joking around, pulling on each other's backpacks as we walked. When we got there, it wasn't like what I had pictured in my mind. I was imagining a completely dilapidated 2-story house that was rotting away, almost on the verge of collapsing. A place that screamed out the ghosts are waiting for you inside. But in reality, the house was built in a small forest in a residential area. It was a modern-looking square house, kind of like Snail's house from Doraemon. It was a bit fancy if you ask me, and it made me wonder whether the house was really abandoned. My excitement kinda died when I saw this place, but since we were all there, we decided to go ahead and explore it. Of course, we started on the first floor and we entered through the back door. Strange things immediately caught our attention. There were beakers, petri dishes, and microscopes, things you'd see in a science lab, not in an everyday home. This immediately made us feel like this house wasn't your typical home where a loving family might have once lived. For some reason, what interested me more were the bookshelves along the opposite wall. The house was spacious, and the shelves were filled with books and documents. Papers were scattered all across the floor, suggesting that we probably weren't the first ones that came to explore this house. It turned out that the person who had been in there before us was the friend who had told me about this abandoned house. "So," my friend said, crossing his arms, "why do you think I told you guys about this place?" When I answered that I honestly didn't know, he pointed his finger at the bookshelf and told me to open a particular book. I picked up the book and opened it as instructed, and everyone there let out an audible gasp. Inside the book was a photo of a dead man. He had been skinned. We all swallowed hard. A moment later, an idea occurred to me. "Isn't this a doctor's house?" I said. And although my friends hadn't fully recovered yet, they seemed to understand where I was coming from. While they continued staring at the picture, I decided to explore more of the first floor. As I looked around the kitchen, living room, bath and toilet, one thing I realized was that the person who lived in this house must have been a very intelligent and fancy individual. Everything about the interior and furniture were different. Even though I was still 10 years old, I could tell the difference between what I saw in this house and everything else I'd seen thus far in my short life. The house was gorgeous. If that were the case, the photo from earlier would have a completely different meaning. Same goes for the room full of books, files, and laboratory equipment. They were all things that made me believe that a doctor used to live there. Someone who brought work home, someone who dedicated his or her life to try to save people. My friend was making baseless remarks, saying things like a crazy doctor used to live there. I honestly thought they should all take a look at the whole house, see how beautiful it was, and maybe they would feel the same way I did. But in hindsight, I think I should have heeded my own advice. My friends were getting tired of looking at the pictures and files, and since it was beginning to get dark, we decided to finish the exploration early and come back the following day. It was at this moment when I noticed something was off. When I was exploring alone, I was so focused on the design of the furniture and interior that I didn't realize it, but something was missing. There were no stairs to the second floor. I went to look outside, thinking the stairs might be there, but nope, nothing. I went back inside and looked around and found the passage leading to the second floor, but that only made me more curious. The stairs had clearly been removed, and the area where the stairs were supposed to be was blocked off with iron plates. As soon as we all saw that, the word curfew flew out of our minds. We absolutely had to see what was up there. We all started talking at once. What if there's a real dead body up there? I knew it! A crazy doctor did used to live here. I bet he was doing some illegal experiments in this house. In the end, we decided to climb up to the second floor using the rope ladder we had made ourselves. To go up from the outside, we had to look for a pipe or a tree that was easy to climb. Since I was the best at climbing trees, I went up the roof drain pipe and set up the rope so that the rest could follow. It was much easier than expected. There was one thing that bothered me though. I couldn't see inside from the second-story window. When I looked closely at the window, I saw newspapers and magazine pages colored black with a marker. Several layers of them seemed to be taped to the window, giving the impression that someone didn't want even a single ray of light to pass through. This made me feel quite unnerved, and my anxiety began to mount as I waited for everyone to climb up. After everyone got onto the roof, it was finally time to enter the room on the second floor. Before we headed in, I told them about the window, which seemed to make everyone uncomfortable, so we decided to take a vote. Those who wanted to go home and those who wanted to proceed. Our curiosity killed the cat, and we decided to go on. I was at the head of the line, so I put my hand on the window and pulled. It slid open quite easily. Part of me was excited, but the other part was starting to regret everything we were about to do. But we'd come this far. We had to see it through. I slid the rest of the window open, and my heart almost stopped. There was a woman in a bikini standing in the room, smiling and looking at me. It took a couple of seconds for me to realize that it was just a poster. My friends burst out laughing when they saw me let out a sigh, which pissed me off, but it lightened the mood a bit, so I let it go. I did wonder, though, who put actual lipstick on her. I hopped into the room first. It was dark and damp inside. Looking around, I saw that there was not even a sliver of light that could get in through the windows. All gaps leading to the outside world were completely blacked out. Even the walls were completely black. Up to a few minutes ago, I believed the person who used to live there was an intelligent doctor who appreciated the finer things in life. But now, my friend's comment about this place belonging to a psychotic doctor was beginning to make more sense. Maybe there really was a dead body somewhere up here. My rational self wanted to turn right around and get out of there, but of course that's not what any of us did. We walked further in, slowly, one step at a time. The deeper we went in, the more apparent it became that this homeowner definitely had some screws loose. When we first climbed into the second floor, there were a bunch of half-naked women plastered on the blackened walls. Walking down the hallway, the faces of these women had been cut out and had been replaced with the faces of dead people, those that had been cut out from the photo albums on the first floor. All my positivity regarding the previous tenant disappeared. It didn't matter whether it was the guy who lived here before or a homeless person who did this. None of us knew how to react to the displayed images all over the walls. We all turned around to walk back to the window we came in from when one of my friends said, "There's someone there." We looked in the direction he was pointing towards. We shone our flashlights at the sliding door leading from the hallway to another room. It was made of frosted glass. There was a woman standing on the other side, in lingerie. Not just one, but several of them. We all froze in place. We stopped breathing. Our flashlights remained pointing at the same spot. I don't know how much time had passed, but someone said, "Are they mannequins?" I replied, Maybe. I opened the sliding door and we all saw it at once. There were about 20 mannequins lined up like trees inside the room. It was the creepiest sight I'd ever laid eyes on. The lingerie they were wearing wasn't just your plain underwear and bra. We were boys. We'd laid eyes on a few adult magazines and we knew that what they were wearing were the naughty kinds. I got chills because I felt like I had taken a glimpse inside the mind of someone who had dressed them up this way. That's when another friend said, pointing at me, "The person who lived here must have been a pervert like you." Everyone started laughing and the tension eased a little. We all decided to look around a bit more and call it a day. We stepped into the room. There was a broken TV, toys, speakers, some more junk, and a pile of books. I grabbed one of them and opened it. "This one too," I said. If you've been paying attention, you probably already know why I said that. The faces in the book had all been replaced by those of dead people. I looked around the room once more when I saw that my friend was fiddling around with something. It was a car battery. I told him to stop if he didn't want to get an electric shock, but he said it was okay and continued to work on it. My heart froze. The TV turned on and my friend shouted, "It turned on! I'm a genius!" The faces of everyone else didn't look excited though, and they asked the obvious question. Why did the TV turn on? The reason for my heart stopping didn't have anything to do with the TV though, and I managed to squeeze out the words. "Guys, this magazine, it's this month's issue." Everyone turned to look at me as the pieces slowly fell into place, and then their faces also froze as we all heard a creak. It was a really faint sound. The lights from the half-broken TV, which was now displaying the disfigured face of a news anchor, as well as from our flashlights, bounced across the room and the mannequins. He was right in the midst of them. I saw a face emerging from between the mannequins. It was a face so full of happiness and joy, with the biggest smile I'd ever seen. As soon as we all saw that it was a person and started screaming for our lives, the man had started to push the mannequins aside and was coming directly for me. All the noise and commotion didn't seem to reach his ears at all. His eyes were glued to mine and he was gunning for me. All my friends were screaming and began running away. It was definitely a human being, not a ghost, and it was a man. I was trying to understand what was going on. I was trying to be logical, thinking that I can't communicate with a ghost, but I can definitely talk to a person. I knew I had to run away, but my legs were glued to the floor and I couldn't move. He was now right in front of me, and I said, "Hello."
"You're so cute."
Did he just compliment me?
"Do you like these? Do you like this kind of thing?"
the man opened a thick book in his hand and showed it to me. It was a book with human remains on it, like the album we found on the first floor. In this one, their faces had been replaced with beautiful pictures of foreign women. No, I don't. I don't like it.
Do you like it? Hey, you like it, don't you? Which one do you like?
The man suddenly began talking in gibberish. I thought he would kill me right then and there. That's when I heard two of my friends calling out for me. They were crying and yelling at me to get my attention, and before I knew it, I was running towards them. I felt like my legs were made of rubber, but I ran down the hallway as fast as I could. Without looking back, I climbed out of the window and saw that my other friends were waiting for me below, beer bottles, hammers, and other weapons in hand, ready to attack the man if he pursued us that far. I started climbing off the roof, and at that moment, I heard someone from behind.
How about this one?
I instantly got goosebumps, and I instinctively turned around. The man was peeping through the window, but this time he was wearing a mask. It looked handmade and looked to be cut from that horrible photo album. I don't know if I lost consciousness for a split second or whether I jumped, but the next second I was on my ass on the ground. We all ran to our friend's house who lived the closest, explained the situation, and got his mum to call the police. Don't know if the police went straight away, but apparently by the time they got there, the house was empty. I had to talk to the police twice, once at my house and once at the station. The strange man was never found, and about 3 months later, my friend told me that the house had been demolished and was now a vacant lot. I mustered up the courage to go there once, and he was right. There was nothing left. So, that's it. Even now, just hearing the word abandoned house gives me shivers. The guy who shared this story commented a while later and provided a bit more information on the crazy man they encountered. The following is what he said. I think I explained that I had trauma from this experience at the very beginning, but while I was writing this story up, I contacted some of my friends from elementary school and I found out who that man was. Apparently, he was the uncle of a classmate of mine. I won't deny trespassing, but it didn't seem like it was that uncle's house either. From what I was able to gather, it seems that my prediction was correct and that it originally belonged to a doctor who worked at a hospital near my house. After the doctor became ill, he moved in to live with his relatives, and the uncle did whatever he wanted in the house, including getting rid of the stairs. He most likely wanted to be in peace upstairs and knew curious people would be coming to explore. He also hated sunlight and refused to go out in the sun. He used to live with my classmate at his home, but he was sent away a few times because he would cause various problems and trouble, but he would always end up coming back. He was also arrested for something similar in the past, but despite that fact, when he was finally caught, he only received a light sentence. There was no relationship between the owner of the house and my classmate's uncle. Anyway, I feel like the trauma inside me has disappeared a little since writing about my experience in this thread. Thank you very much to everyone who read this. What did you guys think of this story? It was a bit scarier for me before I knew who that old man was, but it's rare to get a follow-up from the writer, so I had to share it with you all. Have you ever explored abandoned buildings? Share some of your creepy encounters with us in the comments below. Now, the next story is a paranormal one, and it's extremely creepy. I hope I was able to translate it well enough so that you guys could feel the same chills that I did when I first read the story. This is an experience I heard from a friend. I've changed everyone's names and have written it from my friend's perspective. My brother's gone crazy. Yesterday, my brother came home from an overnight trip with his girlfriend Yoko, but he's acting strange. He's locked himself in his room and won't come out to eat. It was his first trip with his girlfriend, who has a strict family, so he was really excited before they left. She apparently lied to her parents and said she was going with a female friend. I got worried about him, so just before lunch, I called out to him through his door. "Hey, what's wrong? Did you get into a fight with Yoko?" No response. I knocked a couple more times. "Ryoichi, you alive?" After a while, he finally answered in a low, hoarse voice. "If Yoko calls me, just tell her I'm not here." "So you guys did get into a fight. I get it, but you gotta eat, man." I called out to him several more times, but since he didn't respond anymore, I gave up. I went back to the living room and ate the fried rice that our mum had made. In the evening, the phone at home rang. Mum was out doing groceries, so I answered it. It was Yoko. "This is Yoko. Is Ryoichi there?" For a split second, I wondered whether to tell the truth, but the fact that she was calling our home phone meant he wasn't answering his mobile. My brother still seemed to be depressed about whatever happened between them, and I didn't want to force him to talk to her. Not to mention, he would probably beat me up later if I didn't do as he said. I finally answered. "I'm sorry, he stepped out for a while. I don't know when he'll be back." "I see. I found you." Yoko sounded happy and suddenly hung up the phone. I swear I thought I heard her laughing as she did so. I was left feeling quite uncomfortable, so I turned on the TV to distract myself. At night, the doorbell rang and my mum went to answer the door. "Who is it?" she said. "Hi, it's Yoko." It was already past 10 o'clock. I thought her parents were strict. What was she doing here so late at night? My mum glanced over at me, wondering what she should do. Considering she was a young girl and my brother's girlfriend, we couldn't exactly make her stand out in the dark, so my mum decided to at least open the door and hear what she had to say. I heard my brother screaming something from the second floor, but I couldn't make out what he was saying. And anyway, it was too late because Mum had opened the door. As soon as I heard the door open, I heard my mum let out a horrifying scream. My shoulders immediately shot up in fear and I froze. My dad, who was cleaning his ears in the living room, had the exact same reaction and froze in place. I wanted to get up and see if Mum was okay, but I couldn't move. My shoulders were still hunched up against my ears and I was experiencing paralysis. I tried to move my other muscles, but to no avail. I couldn't even talk, so there was no way to check on whether Mum was okay. The only thing I could move were my eyes. I looked to the side and saw that my dad still hadn't moved either. Everything felt so surreal. I looked over to the other side and saw that the door leading from the living room to the house's entrance was wide open. I heard some creaking noises and the rustling of clothes. Someone was coming down the hallway. Was it my brother's girlfriend, Yoko? I strained my eyes and waited for her to enter my peripheral vision. I saw the hem of a black dress. I had met her once before, but whoever was appearing in view looked nothing like her. Her long black hair, which was silky smooth, was all tangled as if she'd just woken up. Although it wasn't quite the Sadako from the Ring style, there were strings of hair covering her face. She was a fair-skinned woman, but now she was pale. It certainly didn't belong to anyone who had blood pumping through their veins. And last but not least, she was walking weird. Her right hand remained on the wall and her left arm was swinging around in front of her. It looked as if she was walking in the pitch dark and couldn't see in front of her, which was weird because all the lights were on. I could see all of this in my peripheral vision, and she was finally right at the door. It was at this point that she slowly turned her head to face me. A whistling sound escaped my throat. I think it was supposed to be a scream, but because my entire body was tensed up and frozen, the air that managed to squeeze out from my throat let out that pathetic noise. Something was wrong with her eyes. The whites were completely red. Not like the redness you get from a lack of sleep. It was as if all the blood vessels in her eyes had burst and had pooled there. But that wasn't all. Her pupils were white. It was kind of clouded, like what you might see in a person who has cataracts. But with cataracts, you can still see the color of your pupils. In her case, her entire pupil had that milky, cloudy whiteness to it. I felt like she was looking at me, but I couldn't be entirely sure. Her eyes were terrifying, and it looked like it was full of hatred and evil. My eyes started to tear up. Yoko then said really happily, "You know you should never lie." She then smirked at me, turned away, and began heading towards the stairs, still walking like a blind person. I still couldn't move, but I could hear her slowly heading up the stairs. A moment later, I heard a scream coming from my brother, and everything went black. The next morning, I was the first to wake up. My dad was still unconscious in the living room, and my mum was out cold by the entrance. I feel pathetic to admit this, but I was too scared to go check on my brother by myself, so I woke my parents up before I did so. We hesitated in front of his door. The vision of that thing from the night before flashed in my mind. I imagined it turning around to give me that same horrific smile when I opened his door. We knocked and called out his name before opening it. Thankfully, Yoko wasn't there. My brother was alive, but he was no longer my brother. He sat there, his mouth hanging open in a lazy smile, making gurgling noises and drooling. His gaze was unsteady, and he was turning his head clockwise, then anti-clockwise, non-stop. My parents and I yelled out his name and shook him to try to snap him out of it, but it didn't work. I somehow knew it wouldn't, but I couldn't help but call his name out over and over again. My mother broke down, bawling her eyes out. My dad had a face mixed with grief and anger. He shut his mouth tight and stared at the floor. My brother had gone crazy. After this, my parents sent a letter of withdrawal to his university and sent him to a psych ward. It's been 6 months and he still hasn't gotten well enough to come home, and I don't think he ever will. I hope to God I'm wrong, but it just seems highly unlikely. Yoko and her family had disappeared off the face of Earth. My dad has reported the incident to the police, but nothing has come of it. What was that thing I saw that night? Did her parents find out that she lied to them about the trip with my brother? Did they punish her for it? Her parents were strict, but maybe they had a sinister secret. I have so many questions that will most likely never be answered. This is a story that was shared by a director of a famous TV program in Japan. One of the shows he produces is a scary show that airs every summer. For content, he solicits scary videos from viewers, and because cameras and phones exist in every household now, the sheer number of creepy videos they receive is staggering. The actual video that will be aired is decided in a meeting, and the motto is, "The scarier, the better." However, in the long history of this show, there has been just one footage that was deemed to be too terrifying that it was shelved straight away. What kind of video was it, you may ask? It's a home video of a family at a park. The father is apparently filming his wife playing with their young son. It's one of those feel-good videos that many families take on a day out, and they all look blissfully happy. As you continue to watch, you see the mother and the boy waving and calling out to the dad. Then, out of nowhere, all of a sudden, a face fills the entire screen. You can't really tell if it's frustrated or sad, but it's a contorted face full of emotion. It's a face you've likely never seen on a living human being. They were horrified and began looking into it straight away. After a bit of research, they found out that the face belonged to that little boy. Apparently, he was being severely abused by the mother while the father was at work, and the boy's ikiryo, or living spirit, flew out to plead with his father and ask for help. The director had seen hundreds of videos up to that point, but he swore that was one footage he could never share to the world. If you don't know what an ikiryo or a living spirit is, I did an entire episode explaining what it is. I've put a link to the video at the very end. This is a story that I experienced when I was in elementary school. At the time, there was a scary rumor going around. It went something like this. If you stay at school past 6 p.m., you will hear the sound of someone running down the hallway. Wondering who else was still there at that hour, you peek out into the hall, but there's no one there. Thinking the person probably went into a room, you think nothing of it and go back to doing whatever you were doing. A while later, you hear someone running down the hall again. But this time, the footsteps stop right outside your classroom door. You look towards the door wondering who it is and see an unfamiliar boy standing just outside, looking in. Everyone called him Kakeru because he was always running in the hallways. It's a play on words in Japanese where Kakeru means to run. The thing about this boy was that he apparently didn't have a head, and no one had ever seen his face. Like any normal person, I was skeptical when I heard the story and of course didn't believe it. That's until the experience I had. Shortly after summer vacation ended, my teacher got mad at me for not doing my summer homework, so I had to stay after school to finish it. I was engrossed in getting it done and didn't notice the time. My teacher came into the classroom shortly after 6 and was surprised that I was still there. He told me I could leave and to finish the rest at home. Feeling relieved, I quickly began to stuff everything into my bag when I heard it. Someone running down the hallway. I was thinking some other kid was also made to stay to finish their homework just like me, when the sound stopped right outside my classroom. That's when I suddenly remembered Kakeru's rumor and my heart began to beat really fast. I felt an intense feeling like someone was staring at me. I was suddenly pouring out sweat from everywhere and I slowly turned my head towards the door. There he was. There was a boy standing there, but the rumors were wrong. He did have a head. I could see that his skin was badly burnt and almost melted off, and there were black, empty holes where his eyes should have been. I let out a scream that didn't even sound like a scream, almost fell on my face as I ran like hell out of the classroom and out of school. I ran non-stop until I reached a familiar building close to my house. For the next few days, I was deathly afraid that the boy might appear in front of me, but that never happened. I never told anyone about this because I didn't think anyone will believe me anyway. But ever since this experience, I never stayed in school later than 6 p.m.